Commander Hygiene gripped the metal railing of the bridge as another explosion lit up the darkness of space. The astral dawn shook violently, throwing several crew members to the floor. Through the massive viewport, she watched in horror as the Crystal Wing, one of their newest ships, broke apart like a fragile toy. "Shields at 20%. Shouted Engineer Soman from her station, her blue fingers dancing across holographic controls. "We can't take another hit like that." The Korthok destroyers moved through space like hungry sharks, their black holes reflecting no light. Each ship was twice the size of the largest Solani vessel, covered in weapon ports that glowed with deadly crimson energy. When they fired, space itself seemed to burn. Lieutenant Jin'e's voice cracked as she read the casualty reports. "Admiral Sung-ho, we've lost the Crystal Wing in peaceful current. The Harmony's Dream is venting atmosphere. Captain Lejeune reports his engines are offline." Admiral Sung-ho stood perfectly still in the center of the bridge, his pale blue skin almost translucent under the emergency lighting. His large, dark eyes, so common among his people, reflected the burning wreckage outside. At 200 years old, he was considered young for a Zalani admiral. His people lived long, peaceful lives, sometimes reaching 500 years. But none of them had ever seen war like this. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked quietly. 14 vessels still combat-capable, sir," Jin'e replied, her voice barely above a whisper, "out of 47 that we started with." The bridge fell silent, except for the constant hum of life support systems and the distant rumble of damaged hull plating. Captain Dong-wook, the ship's communications officer, looked up from his console with tears in his large eyes. "Sir, the Morning Star just went dark. No response to our signals." Hyjin closed her eyes for a moment, remembering Captain Yujin, who commanded that ship. They had graduated from the Naval Academy together, back when the biggest threat they faced was asteroid collisions during mining operations. The Zalani had been peaceful for over 3 centuries. Their ships were built for exploration, research, and trade, not war. Admiral Soman called out, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the Korthok fleet. They're preparing for another assault wave." Through the viewport, the enemy ships began moving into attack formation. The Korthok vessels looked like weapons given form, angular, brutal, covered in armor plating and gun turrets. Everything about them screamed violence and conquest. Sung-ho had read the intelligence reports about the Korthok Empire. They were a race of warriors who lived only for battle and expansion. Their soldiers were genetically modified for combat. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws, they had conquered 12 star systems in the past year, enslaving peaceful species or wiping them out completely. "How long until they reach our homeworld?" Sung-ho asked, though he dreaded the answer. Dong-wook checked his calculations twice before responding. "At their current speed, 18 hours, sir. Maybe 16 if they don't stop to finish off our remaining ships." The thought of Korthok soldiers walking through the crystal cities of Zalani Prime made Hyjin sick to her stomach. She pictured the beautiful gardens where children played, the libraries full of ancient knowledge, the art galleries that held thousands of years of culture. "All of it would burn, sir," Jin'e suddenly called out. Incoming transmission from the High Council. The holographic projector in the center of the bridge flickered to life, showing the ancient face of Elder Minsu. Even in the blue-tinted hologram, his fear was obvious. Behind him, Hyjin could see smoke and the glow of fires. "Admiral Sunjo, the capital is under bombardment from orbit," Minsu said, his voice steady, despite the chaos around him. "You must retreat to the outer system immediately. We're broadcasting an emergency distress signal across all known frequencies." "Elder, with all respect, who would answer such a call?" Sung-ho asked bitterly. "The Corvin Republic has already refused our plea for help. The Vexian Confederacy won't risk war with the Korthak Empire. Stellar Alliance claims they're too far away to assist. We're completely alone." Minsu's image flickered as another explosion shook the government building where he was broadcasting from. "Perhaps not completely alone, Admiral. Our quantum communicators have reached into distant sectors of the galaxy, regions we've never explored. We're offering everything we have. Our gravitational manipulation technology, our medical advances, our complete star charts, our energy research, everything to anyone willing to help us survive." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present.
Oh,
Zalani were offering their most precious secrets, technologies that had taken centuries to develop, to complete strangers in exchange for military protection they couldn't provide for themselves. Suddenly, Dongwook's communication console began flashing with incoming signals. His four-fingered hands moved quickly over the controls as message after message appeared on his screen. "Sir, we're receiving responses from multiple species across the galaxy," he reported, his voice rising with hope. "The Andromedan Collective says they're declining to assist. The Rigel Federation also refuses. The Centauri Alliance." His voice fell. "They also decline." By one, the responses came in. Each one was the same polite refusals, expressions of sympathy, but no offers of military aid. The galaxy, it seemed, was too afraid of the Korthok Empire to risk helping the Zalani. "Wait," Dongwook said suddenly, his eyes widening. "There's one more transmission coming in. The signal is weak, very distant. It's from a system called Sol." The bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. None of them had ever heard of Sol or any species that lived there. "What are they saying?" Hyjin asked, moving closer to Dongwook's station. The communications officer worked to clean up the signal, adjusting frequencies and boosting the receiver power. "The message is, it's very short, sir. It says help is coming. So hold your positions. Signed Admiral Kyungzu of the United Earth Fleet." "Earth," Hyjin whispered, the strange word feeling foreign in her mouth. "What kind of species calls there?" "Planet Earth." Elder Minsu's hologram leaned forward with interest. "Earth. I've never heard of such a world in any of our databases. But if they're willing to help?" Sir Soman interrupted. "Long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace signatures. Multiple ships jumping toward our system, unknown to the Zalani." Their desperate message had reached far beyond the civilized sectors of the galaxy. In the monitoring stations of ancient empires, alien analysts were reading the same intercepted communications with growing alarm. Encrypted messages flew between distant worlds, all carrying the same terrifying news. The Deathworlders are mobilizing. But the Zalani had never heard the term Deathworlder. They had no idea that their saviors came from a world so dangerous that most galactic species considered it uninhabitable. They didn't know that Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet where everything from the weather to the wildlife tried to kill its inhabitants every single day. All they knew was that somewhere in the darkness of space, someone had heard their cry for help. And for the first time in days, Admiral Sungho allowed himself to hope that his people might survive to see another dawn. 3 days before the desperate Zalani message reached Earth's military command. Lieutenant J1 was having what he thought would be another boring night shift at Outpost Vigilance. The small monitoring station floated silently in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, sensors constantly scanning deep space for any signs of alien activity. J1 sipped his coffee and watched the endless stream of data scroll across multiple screens. For the past 6 months, he had been part of humanity's first deep space listening project. Most nights, all he heard was cosmic background radiation and the occasional signal from Earth's outer colonies. But tonight was different. At exactly 23:47 ship time, every alarm in the station began screaming at once. What the hell? J1 jumped from his chair, spilling hot coffee across his uniform. The main communication array was going crazy, picking up a signal unlike anything. In their databases, the transmission was clearly artificial, structured, complex, and definitely not from anywhere in the Sol system. His hands shook as he activated the emergency protocol. Within minutes, the signal was being transmitted directly to Earth Defense Command, where it would wake up some very important people in the middle of the night. The translation took 18 hours. When the computers finally decoded the alien language, the message was simple and terrifying. Help us. We are dying. Captain Bieram had been sleeping peacefully in her quarters aboard the UES Indomitable when the priority alert came through. As the flagship's executive officer, she was used to emergency calls, but this one was different. The communication came directly from Admiral Chen, the head of Earth Defense Command himself. "Captain, Get to the war room immediately. We have first contact. Those 4 words changed everything. Bioram threw on her uniform and ran through the corridors of the massive ship. The Indomitable was humanity's pride, a kilometer-long dreadnought that could house 5,000 crew members and enough firepower to level a small moon. It had been built in the orbital shipyards above Earth, designed specifically for deep space operations that might encounter hostile alien forces. The war room was already buzzing with activity when Boram arrived. Admiral Kung Su stood at the center of a holographic display that showed star charts, alien ship designs, and tactical data. At 52, he was one of Earth's youngest admirals, but also one of its most experienced combat veterans. He had fought in the colony wars on Mars, led the successful defense of Europa against rebel forces, and designed the military doctrine that transformed humanity from a single-planet species into a formidable spacefaring civilization. Admiral, the alien transmission has been confirmed authentic, Boram reported. Handing him a data tablet with the complete translation, our linguists worked with the AI systems all night. The species calls themselves the Zilani. Intelligence estimates they have approximately 2.3 billion inhabitants, spread across 4 planets in a system about 80 light-years from here. Kung Su studied the holographic display showing the distant Zilani system. The tactical projection revealed a civilization under siege, their planets surrounded by an enormous enemy fleet that dwarfed anything humanity had ever assembled. What do we know about their attackers? He asked, zooming in on the enemy ship formations. Commander Hyan Wu, the fleet's chief intelligence officer, stepped forward with additional data streaming across his tablet. The attackers call themselves the Korthok Empire, sir. Long range. Scans suggest they're a highly militaristic civilization with superior numbers, but technology that appears comparable to our own. Their ships are larger than ours, but they seem to rely more on brute force than advanced engineering. How many ships are we talking about? Asked Captain Tae-young, who had just arrived from his own vessel, the heavy cruiser Soul's Fury. The battle-scarred veteran had served under Kyung Su for over a decade, and his ship was famous throughout the fleet for surviving impossible odds. Conservative estimates put the Korthok fleet at over 200 vessels, Hyan Wu replied. But here's what's really interesting. We've been intercepting communications from other alien species across the galaxy. Dozens of civilizations received the same distress call from the Zilani, but they're all refusing to help. The room fell quiet, except for the constant hum of the ship's systems. Boram could see the confusion on everyone's faces. Why would they refuse? She asked. If the Zilani are peaceful and the Korthok are conquerors, would another species want to stop them? Hyan Wu's expression grew serious. Because of what they call us, Captain. We've been monitoring alien communication networks for months now, ever since we developed hyperspace communication technology. In their classification systems, Earth is designated as a Class 12 Death World. Death World. Tae-young repeated the unfamiliar term. Most galactic species evolved on what they call garden worlds, Hyan Wu explained, pulling up comparative data on the main display. Planets with stable climates, low radiation levels, gentle gravity, and minimal natural disasters. They view Earth as, well, as a hellscape that somehow managed to produce intelligent life. The holographic display showed Earth alongside several alien homeworlds. The difference was startling. Where alien planets showed peaceful blue skies and gentle landscapes, Earth's image revealed hurricane systems, volcanic eruptions, massive ice sheets, and radiation belts that would kill most alien species within. Ours, they can't understand how we survived, Hyan Wu continued. To them, our planet is a nightmare. World where everything from the weather to the wildlife tries to kill its inhabitants every single day. They think we must be incredibly dangerous just to have evolved there. Admiral Kung Su walked to the main viewport, looking out at the blue marble of Earth spinning slowly in the distance. Are they wrong? He asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Everyone in the room knew the answer. Humanity had indeed evolved on a world that constantly tried to destroy them. They had survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years, asteroid, Impacts that wiped out entire species, supervolcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, and countless other disasters. Every aspect of human technology, from their ships to their weapons to their survival instincts, had been forged in the crucible of Earth's relentless hostility. Sir Borum said quietly, "Should we be concerned about revealing our capabilities to unknown alien species? Once we engage, there's no going back. The galaxy will know humans exist, and they'll know what we're capable of." Kiangsu turned back to the tactical display, which now showed Earth's assembled fleet. 67 ships floated in formation, around the indomitable destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and support vessels. Each one had been built with the brutal efficiency learned from centuries of warfare on humanity's unforgiving homeworld. Their hulls were thick enough to withstand asteroid impacts, their reactors powerful enough to operate in the radiation storms around Jupiter, and their weapon systems designed to function in the absolute cold of deep space. The ships looked different from the graceful, artistic alien vessels they had seen in the intercepted communications. Human ships were angular, heavily armored, and covered in weapon ports. They looked exactly like what they were, tools of war built by a species that understood violence on a fundamental level. Captain Bahram Kungsu said finally, "Signal. All ships in the fleet. Prepare for immediate hyperspace jump to the Zilani system. And send a message to those aliens. Tell them the cavalry is coming." As alarms sounded throughout the human fleet and 67 warships began powering up their hyperdrives, encrypted communications raced across the galaxy. In the secure channels of ancient civilizations, the same message was repeated over and over. The humans are coming. For the first time in galactic history, the Deathworlders were leaving their home system. They were going to war. The space around Zilani Prime had been filled with the wreckage of battle for days. But nothing could have prepared the survivors. For what emerged from hyperspace at 1432 local time, the human fleet didn't arrive with the elegant grace that most species used when entering a star system. Instead, they tore through the fabric of space-time like bullets. Their hyperspace exits, creating brilliant flashes of light that temporarily blinded sensor operators on both sides. Commander, again, was the first to spot them on the Astral Dawn's sensors. Admiral Sung-ho, multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Unknown vessels entering the system. All broadcasting the same identification, United Earth Fleet. But what shocked everyone wasn't the number of ships, it was how they looked. Where Zilani vessels were built, with flowing curves and artistic beauty, and even Korthok ships maintained some sense of aesthetic design, the human ships looked like someone had taken pure violence and shaped it into metal. They were angular, brutal, and covered in so many weapon ports that they seemed more like flying fortresses than spaceships. "By the ancestors," whispered Admiral Sunjo, his four-fingered hands gripping the bridge railing. "Look at the size of their flagship." The Use Indomitable was a monster. At over a kilometer long, it dwarfed even the largest Korthok battleships. But it wasn't just the size that was intimidating, it was the obvious signs of battle damage. The hull was scarred and pitted with thousands of small impacts, giving it the appearance of a vessel that had been through hell and survived. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Janae, "their flagship alone has more weapon systems than our entire remaining fleet combined. I'm counting at least 40 major gun turrets on the visible side." The human ships moved into formation with military precision, taking position directly between the Zilani homeworld and the advancing Korthok forces. It was a bold move, maybe even suicidal, considering they were outnumbered 3-1. "Captain," Dongwook worked frantically to establish communication protocols. The humans were using a completely unknown transmission method, but their computers were surprisingly advanced at language processing. "Contact established," Admiral Dongwook reported, their requesting permission to speak. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human flagship. The first thing that struck everyone was how small humans were, compared to both Zilani and Korthok. The human admiral was barely taller than a Zilani child, but there was something in his dark eyes that spoke of incredible strength and experience. "This is Admiral Kung Su of the United Earth Fleet," came the transmission. The human's voice was calm, almost casual, despite the massive battle raging around them. "We received your distress call. Please provide tactical data on enemy positions and civilian evacuation status." Admiral Sunho struggled to find his voice. These aliens, these humans, had traveled across the galaxy to help complete strangers. "Admiral Kyungsu, we are grateful beyond words for your response. But I must warn you, the Korthok Empire has over 200 ships in this system. You are severely outnumbered." There was a pause, and Sungho could see the human admiral exchanging glances with his crew. When Kyungsu looked back at the camera, there was something almost like amusement in his expression. "Admiral Sungho, we appreciate the warning. But humans don't really understand the concept of being outnumbered. Please transmit your complete sensor data and move your remaining ships to a safe distance. We'll handle this." The confidence in the human's voice was startling. Haijin looked at the tactical display showing the overwhelming Korthok forces and wondered if these humans were insane or just incredibly brave. Meanwhile, 20 light minutes away, aboard the Korthok command vessel, Bloodclaw, General Morgak was having his own first contact experience. The massive Korthok warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his natural chitinous armor plating gleaming under the ship's harsh lighting. His species had evolved as apex predators on a world where only the strongest survived, and they had built their entire civilization around conquest and warfare. General reported Intelligence Officer Kekstar, a smaller Korthok with specialized sensor equipment grafted into his skull, were intercepting communications between the Zilani and unknown vessels. They appear to be reinforcements. Morgak's mandibles clicked together, the Korthok equivalent of laughter. Reinforcements? Who would be foolish enough to interfere with the Empire's conquest? The newcomers identified themselves as the United Earth Fleet. "General, our databases show limited information about their homeworld. It's classified as a Class 12 Deathworld in the Outer Rim territories." Deathworlders. Morgak's amusement grew. "No wonder they're stupid enough to face us. How many ships?" 67 vessels, sir. Significantly smaller than our fleet." Morgak studied the tactical display, watching the human ships form up in what appeared to be an attack formation. "Send Squadron 7 to destroy them quickly. I want to finish conquering the Zilani before these primitives become a nuisance." Korthok ships, each one a battle-tested destroyer with enough firepower to level a city, moved to engage the human fleet. The Korthok had conquered 12 star systems using these exact same tactics. Overwhelming force applied with surgical precision, but the humans didn't behave like any enemy the Korthok had ever faced. Instead of retreating or attempting to negotiate, the human ships accelerated directly toward the Korthok formation. The lead vessel, a heavy cruiser called Bizen's Hammer, was moving at speeds that should have torn apart any normal spacecraft. "Impossible," breathed Kekstar, watching his sensors. "They're pulling acceleration forces that would crush any known species." The Korthok opened fire first, 20 ships launching a coordinated barrage of energy weapons that lit up space like a miniature star. The crimson beam struck Bizen's Hammer directly, delivering enough energy to vaporize a small asteroid. The human ship kept coming. "What are those ships made of?" General Morgak demanded, watching in disbelief as the human vessel's armor absorbed damage that should have destroyed it instantly. The answer came when Bizen's Hammer returned fire. The ship's main guns were unlike anything in the Galactic. Databases, massive kinetic weapons that fired solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The Korthok had never encountered purely kinetic weapons before. Their shields were designed to deflect energy beams, not physical projectiles. The first shot punched through a Korthok destroyer's shields like they weren't even there, then tore through the hull from bow to stern. The ship exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up the entire battlefield. "Shields ineffective," Kekstar shouted. "Their weapons are purely kinetic. Our defensive systems can't stop them." 2 more Korthok ships died in the next volley, their hulls shredded by weapons designed to break apart asteroids in Earth's mining operations. The human ships were built for a completely different kind of warfare, one where armor was more important than shields and raw firepower mattered more than elegant energy manipulation. General Kekstar's voice was panicked now, reading massive energy signatures from the human ships. Their reactors are operating at levels that should cause catastrophic overload. But what the Korthok didn't understand was that human technology was built to survive Earth's environment first, and alien weapons second. Their reactors were designed to function during solar storms that would fry most galactic electronics. Their holes were thick enough to withstand the kind of debris impacts that were common in Earth's asteroid belt. As the human ships closed to boarding range, launched what appeared to be armored missiles toward the surviving Korthok vessels. Both the Zilani and Korthok realized the same terrifying truth. First contact with humanity was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. These weren't just aliens. These were predators from a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill them. And they had not only survived but learned to thrive in conditions that would destroy any other known species. The age of Deathworld warfare had begun. The boarding pods that launched from the human destroyer Inchin's Wrath looked nothing like the elegant shuttlecraft that most galactic species use for ship-to-ship transfers. These were pure destruction, armored bullets the size of small rooms, designed with one purpose: punch through enemy holes and deliver their deadly cargo directly into the heart of enemy ships. Sergeant Major Yunyong felt the familiar crushing sensation as the pod's engines fired at maximum burn. Around her, 11 other Marines were strapped into their assault harnesses, checking weapons and equipment one final time. Each soldier wore powered armor that looked more like a walking tank than a protective suit. 30 seconds to impact, announced Corporal Minho over the squad's communication system. Remember, these Korthok evolved in low gravity and thin atmosphere. Our standard environmental suits will be more than enough protection. Yunyang smiled grimly inside her helmet. The Marines' standard environmental suits were designed to keep humans alive in conditions that would instantly kill most alien species. Her armor had been tested in the sulfur storms around Venus colonies, where temperatures reached 500 degrees Celsius and the atmosphere was pure acid. It had functioned perfectly in the crushing depths of Europa's underground oceans, where pressure would flatten most aliens like pancakes. The boarding pod slammed into the Korthok cruiser Razorclaw with the force of a meteor strike. Shaped charges detonated simultaneously, blowing a hole through 3 layers of alien hull plating. Before the smoke had even cleared, the Marines were moving. What emerged from that breach was the stuff of nightmares for the Korthok crew. 12 armored figures, each one moving with deadly precision through corridors that were never designed for combat. The human Marines looked like mechanical demons, their armor reflecting the ship's emergency lighting as they advanced deeper. Into the vessel, Commander Vexamore, seasoned Korthok warrior who had led boarding actions on dozens of enemy ships, watched his security feeds in growing horror. His soldiers were dying faster than he could track. The humans moved through the ship like they owned it, their weapons cutting down Korthok defenders with terrifying efficiency. Target the humans with concentrated fire, Vexamore ordered through his ship's communication system. Focus all energy weapons on their armor. A squad of 6 Korthok soldiers took position at the end of a corridor, their energy rifles charged and ready. When Sergeant Major Yunyong rounded the corner, they opened fire simultaneously. 6 beams of superheated plasma struck her armor, directly delivering enough energy to melt through most known materials. Yunyong kept walking. Impossible. Vexamore chittered into his communicator, watching the human soldier advance through a storm of energy weapons fire. Their armor should have failed. Their weapons are military grade. What the Korthok commander didn't understand was that human military equipment followed a completely different design philosophy. Where alien armor was built to deflect energy weapons and provide protection in controlled environments, human armor was designed to keep soldiers alive in situations where everything was trying to kill them. Unyung's powered suit had been tested in the radiation zones around Jupiter, where cosmic rays would cook unprotected aliens in minutes. It had functioned in the ice storms of Titan, where temperatures dropped to minus 180 degrees Celsius. The Korthok energy weapons were powerful. They were nothing compared to what her armor dealt with every day just from Earth's hostile environment. The Marines reached the ship's bridge in less than 10 minutes. By the time they breached the final blast doors, half the Korthok crew was already dead or fleeing in panic. Commander Vexamore made a final desperate stand. Drawing a ceremonial sword that had been in his family for generations, Corporal Minho shot him with a weapon designed to punch holes in asteroid rock. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Kiang-Su was orchestrating a battle unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The main tactical display showed the positions of both fleets, with human ships systematically destroying Korthok vessels that had seemed invincible just hours before. Admiral reported Captain Biram, the boarding actions are proceeding ahead of schedule. We've captured 12 enemy vessels and destroyed 37 others. But the main Korthok fleet is trying to regroup for a final assault. Kyung-Su studied the display, noting how the surviving Korthok ships were forming a defensive formation around their command vessel. General Morgok was no fool. He was trying to concentrate his remaining firepower and force the humans into a direct confrontation. Captain Borum ordered the 3rd Squadron to execute the Corona maneuver. Borum hesitated for just a moment. "Sir, that's a Deathworld-specific tactic. Are you certain our ships can handle the thermal stress?" Captain Kung-Su replied with a slight smile. "We didn't earn the name Deathworlders by playing it safe." Corona maneuver was a tactical doctrine that had been developed during humanity's expansion into the Sol system. It involved using a star's corona, the superheated plasma, atmosphere surrounding the stellar surface, to mask ship movements and launch surprise attacks from impossible angles. For most galactic species, even approaching a star's outer atmosphere was instant suicide. Temperatures were hot enough to vaporize most known materials. The radiation levels would kill entire crews in seconds. For humans, who had spent decades learning to harvest energy from solar storms and operate equipment in the hellish environment around their own sun, it was just another tool of war. 6 human ships from the 3rd Squadron suddenly changed course, accelerating directly toward the system's primary star. The Korthok sensors tracked them until they disappeared into the stellar corona, where the intense radiation and heat made detection impossible. "Where did they go?" demanded General Morgak from his command ship. "Our sensors show nothing." Intelligence. Officer Kekstar worked frantically at his console. "General, no known species can survive in a stellar corona. They must have been destroyed by the radiation." For 20 minutes, the Korthok fleet tried to regroup, believing they had forced the humans to sacrifice an entire squadron in a desperate maneuver. The remaining human ships continued their systematic destruction of Korthok vessels. Odd. But Morgok began to hope that he could still salvage victory from this disaster. That's when 6 ships emerged from the star's corona like demons from hell itself. The human vessels glowed white-hot from their passage through the stellar atmosphere, their hulls radiating heat that would have melted most alien ships. But their weapons were still fully operational, their crews still alive and fighting. They opened fire at point-blank range, catching the Korthok fleet completely by surprise. "By the Empire," General Morgak whispered, watching his tactical display. "As human ships materialize from inside a star, what manner of species fights from within stellar fire?" The answer was becoming clear to everyone in the system. These weren't just aliens who had answered a distress call. These were predators from a world so hostile that it had forced them to adapt to conditions that would destroy any other known species. They fought like creatures that had spent their entire evolutionary history battling an environment that wanted them dead. The Korthok formation broke apart as ships desperately tried to escape the impossible assault. But the humans had one more advantage that no one had anticipated. Their damage control systems were designed to keep functioning even when their ships were falling apart. Korthok vessels that took significant damage would withdraw from combat to make repairs. Human ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting, their crews working in conditions of smoke, fire, and radiation that would incapacitate other species. General Kekstar reported, his voice filled with panic. "We're losing ships faster than our computers can track. These humans, they fight like the universe itself is trying to kill them." General Morgak stared at the tactical display, watching his once mighty fleet being systematically dismantled by an enemy he had underestimated. In that moment, he finally understood the truth that would change the galaxy forever. That's because it is, he said quietly. They're from a death world. They've been fighting for survival since the moment they first drew breath. The Korthok Empire, which had conquered 12 star systems through superior firepower and ruthless tactics, was facing something they had never encountered in their centuries of expansion. An enemy that was more dangerous than they were. The battle for the Zilani system raged for 18 brutal hours, turning the peaceful space around their homeworld into a graveyard of twisted metal and burning plasma. When the guns finally fell silent, the once mighty Korthok Empire fleet was either drifting as wreckage or fleeing in complete panic. General Morgok stood on the bridge of his flagship, Bloodclaw, staring at the tactical display that showed the impossible truth. Of his original fleet of 212 vessels, only 37 remained functional. The rest had been destroyed or captured by a human force that was outnumbered 3-1. His chitinous armor was cracked from the impacts his ship had taken, and green blood seeped from wounds that would have killed lesser Korthok warriors. General, stammered Intelligence Officer Kekstar, his voice shaking with trauma. The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're offering medical assistance to our wounded. Morgok's mandibles clicked in confusion. In all his years of conquest, no enemy had ever offered to help Korthak survivors. The Empire's way was simple. Winners took everything, losers died. But these Deathworlders seemed to follow completely different rules. Through the main viewport, he could see human rescue ships moving between the floating debris, pulling both Korthok and Zilani survivors from damaged vessels. The same humans who had fought like demons from hell were now risking their lives to save their enemies. Sir, his communications officer reported Admiral Kyung-Soo is requesting to speak with you directly. Morgok straightened his massive frame, trying to maintain some dignity in defeat. When the human admiral appeared on his screen, the Korthok general was struck again by how small these creatures were. Kyung-Soo barely reached his chest, yet this tiny being had commanded a fleet that destroyed the pride of the Empire. This is General Morgok of the Korthok Empire, he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. We request terms of ceasefire. There was no mockery in Admiral Kyung-Soo's response, no gloating over his victory. The human simply nodded with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the battle. General Morgok, your request is accepted. Withdraw all Korthok forces from Zilani space immediately. Any attempt to return will be considered an act of war against both the Zilani Confederation and the United Earth Fleet. Understood, Morgok replied, feeling the weight of his first defeat crushing down on him. We will not return. As the surviving Korthok ships limped toward the edge of the system and jumped to hyperspace, a new chapter in galactic history began. The empire that had seemed unstoppable had been broken by creatures from a death world, and word of their defeat would spread to every corner of the galaxy. Admiral Sung-Ho watched from the bridge of the Astral Dawn as the last Korthok vessel disappeared into hyperspace. Around him, his crew was celebrating their survival. But the Zilani admiral felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had happened. His people had been saved by aliens they had never heard of, creatures from a world so hostile that most species considered it uninhabitable. Admiral Kyung-Soo, Sung-Ho, said over the communication link, "Our people are in your debt forever. How can we possibly repay what you have done for us?" The human admiral's response surprised everyone who heard it. Admiral Sung-Ho, we don't want payment or tribute. We want something much more valuable. We want friendship. Our species is new to the galaxy, and we have much to learn about the civilizations out here. Perhaps we can help each other grow stronger. Together, Commander Hyjin looked at her fellow officers in amazement. These humans had traveled across the galaxy, fought an impossible battle, and saved an entire civilization. And now they were asking for friendship instead of demanding rewards. 3 weeks later, crystal spires of Zilani Prime gleamed in the light of their golden sun as the first human diplomatic shuttle descended toward the capital city ambassador. Heron pressed her face to the small viewport, marveling at the beauty of a garden world. Everything was so different from Earth. Gentle breezes instead of hurricane winds, clear skies instead of radiation storms, peaceful landscapes instead. of active volcanoes. Elder Minsu waited on the landing platform, his pale blue skin shimmering in the sunlight. When the human ambassador stepped off the shuttle, he was surprised by how ordinary she looked. After seeing the terrifying efficiency of human warriors, he had expected their diplomats to be equally intimidating. "Welcome to Zilani Prime, Ambassador," Heron Minsu said, performing the traditional Zilani bow. "Though I must confess, we're still adjusting to the idea of Deathworlders as allies rather than threats." Heron smiled warmly, breathing the sweet, clean air of the garden world. "Elder Minsu, humans learned long ago that survival is much easier when you have friends watching your back. We'd like to share our defensive technologies with your people, and in return, we hope you can teach us about galactic civilization and diplomacy." The Zilani elder studied the human ambassador carefully. She was small and seemed fragile, but her eyes held the same intense determination he had seen in Admiral Kyun Su during the battle. These humans might look harmless, but they carried the strength of their deadly homeworld in their spirits. Ambassador Minsu replied, "I believe this will be the beginning of a most unusual and powerful alliance." News of the human victory and their unexpected offer of friendship spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the secure chambers of the Corvin Republic, the High Assembly spent days debating whether to establish contact with Earth. The recordings of the battle showed impossible things, ships fighting from inside a star armor that could withstand weapons designed to crack planets, and warriors who kept fighting even when their vessels were falling apart around them, in the military academies of the Vexian Confederacy. Analysts studied every second of the battle footage, trying to understand how 67 ships had defeated an enemy fleet that numbered in the hundreds. The human tactics made no sense according to traditional military doctrine, but they had worked with devastating effectiveness. Meanwhile, on Earth, in the gleaming halls of the United Nations Space Command headquarters orbiting high above the blue marble of humanity's homeworld, Admiral Kyung-soo met with his senior staff to plan their species' next steps among the stars. "Sir," reported Captain Borum, scanning through dozens of diplomatic messages on her tablet, "we're receiving contact requests from 17 different alien species. It seems the entire galaxy suddenly wants to talk to us." Kung-soo walked to the massive viewport that showed Earth slowly rotating below them. The planet that had tried to kill humanity for millions of years now looked peaceful and beautiful from space. But he knew the violent reality hidden beneath those swirling clouds. "Barum, for 4 billion years, this planet threw everything it had at us. Ice ages that lasted millennia, asteroid impacts that blocked out the sun, supervolcanoes that poisoned the air, radiation storms that should have sterilized all life. But we survived it all. We adapted, we grew stronger, and we learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is help others survive too." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Kung-soo turned back to his staff, and for the first time since the battle, he allowed himself to smile. "Signal all fleet commanders. I'm going to show this galaxy that Deathworlders make the best friends you could possibly ask for. And prepare a formal message for the Galactic Council. Tell them that Earth is ready to take its place among the stars." As human ships began spreading across the galaxy, carrying both the promise of protection and the offer of genuine friendship, a new age began. The species that had survived the impossible had become the guardians of the possible. Other civilizations would learn that while humans were indeed dangerous, they were dangerous in defense of those they called friends. The Zilani were the first to benefit from this friendship, but they would not be the last across the vast expanse. Of space-threatened species would learn to broadcast a simple message into the void: "Help us, humans." And from the death world called Earth, the answer would always be the same: "We're coming." The bridge filled with the sound of massive engines coming online. The Iron Phoenix was awakening from its long slumber, and the vibration could be felt in every rivet and beam. External cameras showed other ships emerging from their hiding places throughout the dead star system. The Bone Crusher uncloaked first, its hull scarred from 100 battles. Then came the Starbreaker, bristling with weapons that could level cities. The Shadow Walker flickered in and out of visibility as its stealth systems activated. "All units responding," Admiral Dong Yun announced. Fleet commanders are requesting orders. Hyunwoo looked at the alien message one more time. Somewhere out there, an alien captain was waiting for help, probably thinking that humans were just another weak species. He had no idea that he had just awakened the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Send response to the alien vessel, Hyunwoo ordered. Tell them help is coming. Don't mention who we really are or what we're capable of. Let that be a surprise for everyone. The ghost fleet began to move, emerging from the shadows where they had waited for 3 centuries. The hunt was beginning, and this time humanity would be ready. Space rippled like water as the first human ship appeared. Captain Juwan blinked hard, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him. One moment there was empty darkness, the next moment a massive warship hung in space beside his research vessel. But this wasn't like any ship he'd ever seen before. The whole seemed to shift and blur, as if it existed in several places at once. Lightning-like energy crawled across its surface, making the fabric of space around it twist and bend. Ah! More ships appeared, each one materializing from nothing, like deadly phantoms stepping out of nightmares. Sir, my sensors can't get a proper reading on them, Taeyeon reported, his voice shaking. It's like they're only half here. The other half is somewhere else entirely. Giwan counted at least 20 vessels, and each one was larger than anything. In the Galactic Fleet, their designs were unlike anything he'd studied in his years as a researcher. Sharp angles that hurt to look at, surfaces that seemed to absorb light itself, and weapon ports that glowed with colors that had no names. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves, came a transmission from the lead ship. The voice was human, but there was something cold and dangerous about it. This wasn't the primitive species the galaxy knew about. Giwan's hands trembled as he activated his communication system. This is Captain Park Giwan of the Galactic Research Division. Are you the ones who sent the beacon? A different voice answered, and Juwan felt a chill run down his spine. It was calm, controlled, and absolutely deadly. Commander Kim Soo-ben, Human Deep Strike Force. We received your call for help. The Devourers are here, aren't they? Deep Strike Force? Giwan had never heard of any human military organization with that name. According to galactic records, humans barely had a space program, let alone a military fleet that could appear from nowhere. Commander, we witnessed an attack on Kepler 7, Giwan managed to say. The entire planet was consumed in minutes. We've never seen anything like it. We have, Soo-ben replied grimly. How long ago? 6 hours. They're moving toward the inner systems now. Millions of lives are at stake. Before Soo-ben could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. Massive shapes emerged from the rip in reality, each one a geometric nightmare of dark metal and hungry energy. The Devourer fleet had arrived, and they were even more terrifying up close. Giwan counted 50% of the monster ships, each one the size of a space station. Their surfaces were covered in patterns that made his eyes water just looking at them. Energy beams reached out from their holes, testing the space around them like the tongues of giant serpents. All ships, weapons free. Commander Suban's voice cut through the chaos. I show them why humans earned our reputation in the dark. What happened next defied everything Giwan thought he knew about warfare. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, reality itself became their weapon, the lead human vessel, which Soo-ben had identified as the Nightmare's Edge, fired something that looked like a beam of pure darkness. Where it struck the nearest Devourer ship, the enemy vessels simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not blown apart. It was as if it had never been there at all. Another human ship, sleek and predatory, fired projectiles that seemed to bend space around them. The missiles didn't travel in straight lines. They curved through dimensions that shouldn't exist, appearing inside the Devourer ships and exploding from within. How are they doing that? Minji whispered, staring at her sensor readings. Energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. The Devourers fought back with their own terrible weapons. Beams of consuming energy lanced out, trying to devour the human ships like they had devoured Kepler-7, but the human vessels were ready. They flickered in and out of existence, phasing between dimensions to avoid the attacks. One human ship took a direct hit, and Ji-won thought it was destroyed. But instead of exploding, the vessels seemed to absorb the energy and grow stronger. Its hull glowed brighter, and when it fired back, its weapons had twice the power. Impossible, Dr. Sungmin breathed. They're using the enemy's own energy against them. The battle raged around the new Sol, but the human ships made sure no stray shots came near the research vessel. It was as if they had complete control over every aspect of the fight, despite being outnumbered more than 2-1. Commander. Suban's ship moved like a living thing, dancing between enemy fire with impossible grace. It launched smaller craft that looked more like metal angels than fighters. These ships dove into the heart of the Devourer formation, their weapons carving through enemy hulls like hot knives through butter. Captain Ji-won Subain's voice came over the communication channel again. Take your ship and get to minimum safe distance. This is about to get messy. What do you mean? Ji-won asked. We're going to show these things what happens when they threaten innocent lives, Suben replied. Humanity doesn't negotiate with planet eaters. The human fleet began to glow brighter, their hulls crackling with energy that made space itself tremble. Whatever they were preparing to do, it was going to be devastating. Ji-won ordered his ship to retreat, but he couldn't look away from the battle. These humans weren't the primitive species everyone thought they were. They were something far more dangerous warriors, who had been preparing for this fight for centuries. The real battle was just beginning. The universe exploded into chaos as the two deadliest forces in the galaxy collided. Space itself screamed, as reality-cutting beams from the Devourer ships met the shimmering quantum shields of the human fleet. Where the energies touched, explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Their force so intense that nearby asteroids cracked and shattered into cosmic dust. Lieutenant Minho gripped the controls of his fighter craft, the Shadow Dancer, as he dove through the maelstrom of destruction. The ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, sleek and deadly, powered by a dimensional engine that allowed him to slip between the cracks of reality itself. Phoenix Squadron, form up on me, he called into his helmet communicator. We're going for their command ships. Stay sharp. These things can sense fear. Behind him, 11 other fighters fell into formation. Each pilot was hand-picked from humanity's best, trained since childhood to fight enemies that existed beyond normal understanding. Their ships flickered in and out of visible space, appearing to attack from angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional reality. Minho's targeting system. Locked onto a massive Devourer vessel, its geometric hull covered in hungry mouths that consumed light itself. Target acquired. Phoenix 2, take the left flank. Phoenix 3, come in from below. Copy that, Phoenix leader, came the reply from Lieutenant Yoonji in Phoenix 2. These things are uglier up close. The fighters split apart, each one taking a different approach vector. Minho's ship phased through a Devourer energy beam that would have vaporized a normal craft, emerging on the other side to unleash a barrage of quantum torpedoes. The weapon struck the enemy hull, and tore holes in reality itself, causing sections of the Devourer ship to simply cease existing. But for every enemy ship they damaged, two more seemed to take its place. Dark portals were opening throughout the battle zone, spilling forth reinforcements from the depths of space where the Devourers had been sleeping for millennia. On the bridge of the Iron Phoenix, Admiral Hyunwoo watched the tactical display with growing dread. His fleet was fighting magnificently, but the odds were getting worse by the minute. Red icons representing enemy ships filled the holographic display like drops of blood in water. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildups from at least 50 more Devourer ships approaching from the galactic core," reported Lieutenant Dong Yoon. "They'll be here in 20 minutes. Commander Nayin stepped beside Hyunwoo, her scarred face grim in the red battle lighting. "Sir, if we don't stop them here, they'll reach the populated systems. Billions will die." Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of countless lives on his shoulders. When he opened them again, his decision was made. Prepare the Voidbreaker weapon. The bridge fell silent, except for the distant sounds of battle. Every crew member knew what the Voidbreaker was, humanity's most terrible weapon. Created from technology, salvaged from cosmic horrors they'd defeated in wars the galaxy never knew about. Sir Commander Neon said quietly, "That weapon will tear a hole in space-time itself. The dimensional backlash could destroy us all. Better we die than let them reach the innocent," Hyunwoo replied, his voice like steel. "How long to charge the weapon?" Chief Engineer Sujin's voice crackled over the intercom from deep within the ship. 10 minutes, Admiral, but I need to route power from all other systems. We'll be defenseless while it charges." "Do it, Hyunwoo," ordered. Then he activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Hyunwoo. We're preparing to deploy the Voidbreaker. I need every ship to buy us 10 minutes. Final assault pattern, make them count." The response was immediate. Every human ship in the fleet suddenly blazed with light as they diverted all power to weapons and engines. They charged straight into the heart of the Devourer, swarm like arrows shot from the bow of an angry god. The Starbreaker led the charge, its captain ramming his ship directly into a Devourer mothership. The explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. The Shadow Walker flickered through dimensions, peering inside enemy ships to detonate its reactor core, taking dozens of Devourers with it. Lieutenant Minho's fighter squadron dove through the chaos, their ships dancing between energy beams that could slice planets in half. "Phoenix Squadron, cover the Iron Phoenix," he commanded. "Don't let anything through." But the cost was terrible. Human ships were dying, their crews sacrificing themselves to buy precious seconds. The Bone Crusher took a direct hit from 3 Devourer ships at once, its hull cracking like an egg. Captain Yunho's last transmission was calm and steady. "Tell my family I kept the oath." On the Iron Phoenix, the Voidbreaker weapon was reaching critical charge. The ship groaned and shuddered as energies that belonged at the birth of the universe built up in its core. Sparks flew from control panels, and the lights flickered as every ounce of power was channeled into the terrible device. "Weapon at 90% charge," Sujin reported. "Ship won't hold together much longer." A massive Devourer ship broke through the human defensive line, its reality-cutting beam aimed directly at the Iron Phoenix. But before it could fire, Lieutenant Minho's fighter appeared between them, his small ship absorbing the full force of the attack. "Phoenix leader is down," someone screamed over the radio. "Minho's ship is gone. His sacrifice had bought them the final seconds they needed." "Voidbreaker at full charge," Sujin announced. "Ready to fire on your command." Admiral Hyunwoo looked at the tactical display one last time. Half his fleet was gone, but they had held the line.
"Fire the weapon,"
he commanded. "End this nightmare." The universe held its breath as humanity's ultimate weapon prepared to unleash hell itself. The Voidbreaker weapon fired with a sound that existed beyond hearing. Reality itself screamed as the device tore through the fabric of space-time like a knife through silk. Captain Jiwon watched from his research vessel as the universe around the human fleet began to unravel. The weapon didn't fire energy or projectiles. Instead, it fired pure chaos, the raw stuff that existed before the universe was born. Where the beam touched space, the laws of physics simply stopped working. Stars flickered between existing and not existing. Time moved backward and forward. At the same moment, Upe became down, and down became inside out. The Devourer fleet, caught in the middle of this dimensional storm, discovered that their matter-consuming hulls couldn't process something that wasn't quite matter at all. Their ships, which had devoured entire worlds without effort, began to stretch and twist like taffy in the hands of a giant. "My sensors are going crazy," Minji reported, her voice filled with wonder and terror. "Space itself is breaking apart. The largest devourer, mothership, bigger than Earth's moon, tried to escape by tearing open a portal to dark space. But the Voidbreaker's chaos followed it through, infecting the portal itself. The gateway collapsed, taking a dozen enemy ships, with it into a dimension that no longer had a name, one by one. The Devourer vessels were pulled apart by forces they couldn't understand or fight. Some ships were scattered across infinite dimensions, existing everywhere and nowhere at once. Others were frozen in time loops, doomed to experience their destruction forever. The lucky ones simply ceased to exist, erased from reality as if they had never been built. Admiral Hyunwoo watched from the bridge of the Iron Phoenix as his terrible weapon did its work. The ship shuddered and groaned around him, damaged by the dimensional feedback, but still holding together. Sparks flew from control panels, and the lights flickered, but they had survived. "Weapon discharge complete," reported Chief Engineer. "Sujin, the dimensional rift is closing. All Devourer ships in the target zone have been eliminated." But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Of the 47 ships that had answered Hyunwoo's call, only 19 remained. The Starbreaker was gone. The Shadow Walker had vanished into a dimension that might not even exist. Hundreds of brave souls had given their lives to protect a galaxy that didn't even know they existed. "Commander." Neon looked at the casualty. Reports with tears in her eyes. "Lieutenant Minho's squadron." "Phoenix Squadron is gone, sir. All 12 fighters lost." Hyunwoo closed his eyes and felt the weight of every lost life. These weren't just soldiers. They were friends, family, people he had trained and served with for decades. But their sacrifice had meaning. The Devourer threat was ended, at least for now. "Signal all surviving ships," he ordered. "Begin withdrawal procedures. It's time to go home." Captain Juan watched in amazement as the human vessels began to prepare for departure. But these weren't the crude ships he had expected. As the dimensional chaos cleared, he could see them properly for the first time. Each ship was a work of art and terror combined. Their hulls were covered in symbols that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. Energy flowed across their surfaces like living lightning, and their weapon ports glowed with colors that had no names in any language. "Unknown human vessels," Jiwon transmitted desperately. "Please respond. The galaxy needs to know what you've done here. You saved billions of lives." Commander Suban's face appeared on the communication screen. He looked tired, older somehow, as if the battle had aged him years and minutes. Behind him, Jiwon could see the bridge of his ship, not the primitive control room he expected, but a chamber filled with technology that seemed almost magical. "The galaxy is safer not knowing we exist, Captain," Subin said quietly. "We are. The Watchers in the dark. We always have been. But why?" Juan asked. "Why keep your capabilities secret? You could lead the galaxy, protect everyone." Subin smiled sadly. "Because the moment the galaxy knows we exist, we become a target. There are things out there in the deep dark, Captain. Things that make the Devourers look like children's toys. They hunt civilizations that grow too strong, too advanced, but they ignore the ones they think are weak." The truth hit Juwan like a physical blow. Humanity had been pretending to be primitive, hiding their true power to avoid attracting the attention of even worse threats. They were the galaxy's secret guardians, standing watch against horrors that most species couldn't even imagine. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked. "Since we first left our home world and discovered what was really out there," Subin replied. "We learned quickly that in this universe, the strong prey on the weak. So we became the hidden strong, protecting the visible weak." One by one, the human ships began to fade from view. Not destroyed, but simply becoming invisible, slipping back into the spaces between dimensions where they had waited for centuries. Will we ever see you again? Guan asked. Hopefully not, Subin said. If you see us again, it means something terrible is coming. But know this, Captain, while you sleep peacefully in your beds, while children play on colony worlds, while scientists explore new stars, we are out here, watching, waiting, ready. To pay any price to keep the darkness at bay. The Iron Phoenix was the last ship to disappear. Admiral Hyanwu's final transmission was brief. Take care of each other out there, and remember, you are never alone. As the human fleet vanished into the void, Captain Jiwan sat in his command chair and stared at the empty space where they had been. His crew worked quietly around him, still trying to process what they had witnessed. Somewhere in the depths of space, beyond the reach of any sensor, the surviving human ships took up their positions once more. Admiral Hunwu stood on his bridge, looking out at the stars, knowing that other threats would come. They always did. But humanity would be ready. They had been ready for centuries, and they would be ready for centuries more. The galaxy's silent guardians had returned to their eternal watch, protecting billions of lives that would never know their names. The universe was vast and full of terrors, but it was also full of heroes willing to stand against the dark. Sometimes the greatest heroes were the ones no one ever saw coming. The end.